Andrew, it's great to have you back on the road to autonomy. I gotta tell you, sir, Nuro's pivot to licensing is paying off in a big way. The deal with Uber and Lucid, I saw the headline said, holy shit, wow, they did it. How did that deal come about? Because I read your SEC filings on it from the Lucid side and the Uber side, and there was a lot of really impressive details in there.
Yeah, it's great to be back, Grayson. Good to see you again. I know we teased this a little bit last time, but super excited to be here and share some deals, share some news on the deal, rather. Obviously, as you say, this is hugely validating for Nuro. We're incredibly excited about it. I think it's validating both for the licensing shift, as you mentioned. It's also just validating for where we are as a company, the maturity of our technology and how close we are to actually commercializing that at scale. In terms of how the deal came about, it was really quite organic. We've had a relationship with Uber for a number of years now. In fact, in 2022, we announced a partnership on the delivery side. And so as that partnership evolved, we've been doing real deliveries with our Prius fleet, with Uber Eats. And it became clear that Uber was looking to make a big bet and really secure its AV future. And as that became clearer, and we started talking about what that might look like, they went through a process, which obviously I can't speak to, that's their business. But the end result was that Nuro was the AV player they wanted to make that bet on. And so as we started thinking about what the vehicle platform was that we actually wanted to go to market with, Lucid came into the picture. And as we thought about the strengths of that platform, the hardware redundancy that would allow it to be level 4 autonomous in driving, the user experience, the range, which would allow really favorable unit economics, it really just came together in a beautiful way. And we're super excited about bringing it to market. It's been a fascinating project to work on. The prototype vehicles have been something we've been working on since early this year. So I've already driven in one in fully autonomous mode on our closed course track in Vegas, and super excited to be here to talk about it.
If you look at it from the Lucid side, Eric Bach, their chief engineer, is an incredible engineer, the way that he's built the vehicles. And then if you look at it from the Uber side, it was very interesting. About a month and a half ago, Andrew McDonald, which I'm sure he was involved with this deal, all suddenly he's COO. I was like, oh, we got an AV guy in the Uber C-suite there. So all the pieces are coming together. From a deal standpoint, is this purely a licensing deal where Nuro is licensing the driver to Lucid? Are you licensing it to Uber? How does that work from a deal structure standpoint?
The beauty of this deal is that each party gets to do what it is best at. Nuro brings its autonomy stack, so both hardware and software. Uber obviously brings the marketplace, global demand, global reach, and Lucid brings a really fantastic vehicle in the Lucid Gravity, as we talked about a second ago. In terms of the underlying economic model, Uber and its fleet partners will be purchasing the vehicles from Lucid. That's been made public. And in terms of the Nuro licensing model, yes, you are correct. We are receiving a licensing fee. In this case, it will be from Uber.
Wow. So you're truly validating the model, and you're not going to own the asset, which is great from a technical standpoint. Last September, you were very kind. You hosted me at the Nuro headquarters. We went a ride around Mountain View, and I told you I was very impressed. How has the technology changed, or how has the stack changed from the vehicle that we were in together, the Prius, to what's going to be coming available on the Gravity?
Core autonomy architecture really has not changed much. We rely on an end-to-end model with kind of traditional robotics-based safeguards in order to validate performance, make sure that it is safe, ensure a really high floor in terms of the performance of the overall system. So that has not changed. We are an AI-first company. Our AV stack is AI-first. What will change and what will evolve is the generalizability of the model because of how much incremental data that we are collecting. We've now collected data in 150 cities across the world. That's numbers only going to go up. We're doing more international data collect. We've talked about that a little bit. And so the fundamental model is only going to get more capable. But again, in terms of foundation, this is just building on what we've done already. We've got multiple years now, 4+ years of driverless deployments that we're building on. And all of that will come together in the form of a safety case with a very high bar that will allow us to launch a commercial robotaxi service late next year with Uber.
You said two words that stuck out to me: global and international. And if you look at who's backed by Lucid, it's the Saudi PIF, the Public Investment Fund. You're testing globally. Lucid has global ambitions now with the new Riyadh plant coming online. And it was alluded to a little bit in the filing that this deal could potentially be global. Obviously, it was very clearly stated you're starting in a US market. But over time, do you see this deal eventually becoming global?
Absolutely. The deal itself is explicitly global in nature. We have a roadmap of international cities that we've already roughly aligned on with the three parties. I'm not in a position to share that just yet, but come a few years from now, you will see us launch this service internationally. And we're very excited about that. I think one of the things that Uber really brings to the table, as I mentioned, is this global reach. And so you saw in the headline this commitment of a minimum of 20,000 vehicles over the next 6 years. We really see that as the floor. What we're actually trying to achieve in terms of the scale of this deal is much, much larger than that. We see a multiple of that being deployed across the world in that same time horizon.
And I want to highlight to the audience here, this is not a reservation press release. If you read the SEC filing, contractually minimum guarantee is 10,000. So you're going to deploy a larger amount of vehicles there. The 20,000, yeah, I believe it's just a starting off point. So how long until these vehicles end up in Saudi Arabia? 27, 28. The minister was out there last week touting the fact that he wants autonomy.
We're very excited to launch there in due time. We'll share more in the future in terms of when that can happen concretely.
Another thing that I noticed in the SEC file, it's going to be a common trend because I went through them, is that Uber is paying Lucid for tooling. That was very, very interesting. As it comes to the integration aspect for the Nuro driver, do you send CAD drawings to Lucid? Do you actually send physical hardware? How does that work from an engineering standpoint, since you and all of your public announcements and in the filing made it very clear that these are going to be factory grade vehicles?
This deal and this commercial tie-up more broadly really is different than anything else out there in a number of ways. So as you rightly noted, the Nuro driver hardware is being integrated into the Lucid Gravity vehicle on the production line. And so when we think about the Nuro driver, it's both the software and the hardware spec. So the sense and compute, we spent a lot of time optimizing the cost of. We think the overall cost of our sense and compute is a huge part of what has made this attractive to Uber. It makes the unit economics work despite an overall price point on the vehicle that you might think would be too expensive. But when you actually look at the lifetime of the vehicle, how it can be utilized because of the very high range and the overall unit economics of our hardware, it's a very compelling option. And Uber would not have made this bet in the scale that it did if that were not the case. But I think the integration is a big part of it. Two, as you noted, is the commitment to scale. Lucid and Nuro both are the beneficiaries of the commitment that Uber has made in terms of the minimum scale. And when you put the economics behind this that Uber has in terms of the investment in both Nuro and Lucid, it really just unlocks a lot of things. It unlocks a better product experience, but fundamentally, we are solving for scale, really solid unit economics, a really safe experience, and a really fantastic user experience as well.
Okay, three things to unpack there. You have the product, the user experience, and the range. And if you look, I'll call them the chattering class because they just chatter and they make up numbers. Oh, Lucid Gravity is too much. I said, no, if you look at the range and you look at the engineering, you look at the overall maintenance cost, it's very compelling. And if you look at, let's just, you estimate what your stack is going to cost from a cost efficiency standpoint, you can really scale. So you have that. So let's unpack that. Did range play a big role in this in choosing? Because obviously they have the air and they have the gravity. I think you made the right choice personally with the gravity. It's a bigger vehicle. And you passed the golf club test, so you can put golf clubs in the back of the Nuro Lucid vehicle. Did range play a large part of this?
It was certainly an aspect of the gravity that made it attractive. When you think about making the economics of a robotaxi service work at scale, it's really what is the asset cost, both the vehicle and the AV hardware, and how well can you utilize that asset and monetize it in a robotaxi use case. And so when you think about the gravity having such a large range, that just allows for much greater uptime. It can also charge incredibly quickly. And so the overall picture of fleet management and asset utilization is very favorable. And again, Uber they know what they're doing. They've been working at this for quite some time. And I think when you look at the bet that they've made in terms of scale, they would not have done that if the overall unit economics were not something that they felt very confident in. And I think the fact that this can both go global in terms of volume of vehicles because of the integration at the production line, the scale that Uber has in its marketplace, and the scalability of the unit economics really make this a incredibly consequential deal when you look at the overall robotaxi market. I really don't think it's hyperbolic to say that this is one of the most consequential commercial partnerships that has happened in our industry to date.
I said it a few weeks ago in the Road to Autonomy newsletter that Uber struck gold with this deal. I truly believe that because what the Nuro Lucid partnership gave Uber was the de-risk against the Waymo relationship, because nobody knows where that's going, and you de-risk that. But what you also did, and I said this years ago, going back to when Travis was still running Uber with X, was the inconsistency of the product of X. X is a very inconsistent product. You have good rides, you have bad rides, and you have in-between rides. But what you're giving them is a consistent, high-level, high-quality product with your partner, Lucid. Andrew McDonald has confirmed this to me very publicly on X, that they are working on a robotaxi tier right now. If you're in Atlanta or you're Austin, you order a Waymo. It's on the Uber X tier, but you can get it on Comfort. Knowing that a robotaxi tier is coming, and Uber's publicly confirmed that, do we get it's called a special Lucid tier? Because the Lucid Gravity it's a luxury vehicle. It's a consistent product. Do we eventually get their own tier?
It's an interesting question. I can't speak to Uber's strategy, but what I will say is the general challenge you articulate is one that Andrew McDonald and I know quite well. We worked together back at Uber in the early days. I started in 2011. He was shortly thereafter, and we were both in the operations functions. And I think the consistency of supply was a challenge then. It's a challenge now. And when you look at the Gravity vehicle, how amazing of an experience it's going to be just from a vehicle standpoint. And then you layer on autonomy on top of it. It's something that we're just incredibly excited about. So again, I'd have to defer to Uber in terms of how they think about positioning the product, how they think about pricing the product, so on. We're just really focused on delivering autonomy that is incredibly safe, incredibly scalable. And the Gravity itself delivers a really spacious, quiet, comfortable experience in a way that I don't think exists today.
And it's extremely well engineered. I got to give Lucid a lot of credit. They're extremely well engineered vehicles. Obviously, you're providing the Nuro driver, you're providing the specs for the hardware, you're providing the AI software that powers it. Is your team, because you have the operational experience, are you having any advice or insight that you're offering Uber from a maintenance and ongoing fleet deployment strategy? Do you offer any insight on that?
The vehicle itself is something that Lucid is the most well-versed in. We are obviously working together, all three parties, to create a service that has very, very high uptime and has the unit economics that I mentioned before. And so we will certainly be providing some help in terms of how Uber and its fleet partners manage the AV hardware itself to solve for that really, really high uptime.
And one thing I've noticed from your competitors, some of your competitors don't have a very strong supply chain. Knowing that you're going towards a 26 launch, and then eventually you're going towards a global launch, are you working today to secure the supply chain to ensure that you have the components you need for your hardware in case there is a maintenance issue, that if you want to just use the term hot swap, you can swap them into, so vehicles can keep that really high uptime?
Vehicle programs like this certainly have risks. And in the current day and age, supply chain is one of them, just given geopolitical concerns, the trade dynamics, so on. So it's certainly on the list of risks that we are keeping an eye on and trying to mitigate. I can't get into much more detail than that, but certainly the ability to scale is contingent on having the hardware available. So we're taking that very seriously.
I'll put that in plain terms. You're on top of it. How's that?
Yes, I would agree.
So obviously, as I said, you're providing the software. How are the updates going to work? So the engineering team says, okay, we're ready to push out Nuro Driver 2.0, 2.1. How are those updates going to work? Is that going to be managed by Nuro from the software perspective?
Well, I talked a little bit about the advanced engineering of the Gravity vehicle, and that applies both to the fundamental hardware redundancies that allow this to be level 4 capable so quickly. It also applies to things like over-the-air updates. And so when you talk specifically about updating the Nuro driver, that is something that we'll be able to do over the air, thanks to the existing infrastructure that Lucid has built.
Did Lucid have to build, if you use the autonomous trucking term, a dual redundancy chassis? Was there anything special that has to go into these gravities in order to accommodate the Nuro driver?
Lucid has made a lot of investment already in having the necessary hardware redundancy for these vehicles to be L4 capable. And so one of the things I think is really exciting is, again, just how quickly this came together. We got the first prototype vehicle earlier this year, and within 7 weeks, we had it driving autonomously on our closed course facility in Vegas. Part of that was the hardware redundancy, but the full integration has just been so smooth, and it's been really great to work with the Lucid technical teams on that. The Prius vehicle that you rode in last year, Grayson, we actually kind of had to hack into in order to get the system to respond to our controls. We had to do some work there to get that fully functional from an autonomous standpoint. The integration with the Lucid vehicles really was deep from day one, and so the controls are super smooth. The integration has happened very quickly. The general cultural compatibility between our engineering teams has been really high. So there's just a lot to be excited about in terms of the technical collaboration.
Another thing I've noticed too in the photos that you've released as part of the deal, that the sensor stack is very slim. Was that done by design? Because that goes back to what Walt and I have talked about, blending into the communities. If I saw a Gravity, or I saw, let's say, the Nuro Gravity, oh, okay, it's just it's a normal car. Maybe it's a ski rack. Was that design done on purpose to blend in and be a part of the community?
One of the shifts we made in terms of our overall effort to make our hardware stack as cost efficient as possible is move to automotive grade components. And specifically on the LiDAR front, we use solid state LiDAR instead of rotary LiDAR like we have in the past. And so you'll see some of our vehicles on the road that have the very tall top hat with the rotary LiDAR on it. That has shifted to a solid state LiDAR, and it's a just more compact piece of equipment. And so that has allowed us to create this structure that you see on the top of the vehicles that is quite slim, it's very aerodynamic, so on. Lucid has invested a ton of time and engineering resources to make their vehicles aerodynamic. That's part of what allows for the 450-mile range. And so it's been a very close collaboration with them to package the sensors and integrate them into a vehicle in a way that not only is very aerodynamic to maintain that range, but also solves for aesthetics. We want this to look as much like a normal vehicle as possible. And so we've put a lot of care into the design of that top hat you see in the pictures that we've shared, and just how the rest of the sensors are integrated into the body. So overall, I think it's a really interesting step in terms of how the Nuro driver will evolve over the years into powering perhaps personally owned vehicles in a way that does not compromise aesthetic.
Personally owned is coming at some point. You and I talked about that the last time you were on. Is the deal with Lucid, would you say this is the first step of many potential OEM deals that you're looking at?
We have a lot of exciting things in the works on the commercial side. There are some efforts on the personally owned vehicles, as we've talked about a little bit. I'm not in a position to share more today, but those are actively being worked on. We have some active engagements on that front. We also have other verticals that we're working on that are non-robotaxi, non-personally owned vehicles, other use cases. So we really are trying to build this AI-based driver that is applicable across a wide variety of use cases. This Uber Lucid deal is a huge validation point in terms of how far that technology has come, what its commercial scalability is. We'll hope to have more to share in terms of other use cases in the coming months.
From a hardware perspective, when you do eventually go to personally owned, could we just assume that it'll look very similar to the Gravity, or is your engineering team building a completely different stack for personally owned?
The core Nuro driver sense and compute configuration for a level 4 application is something that we feel very confident in from a performance and cost perspective. There are other potential use cases of the Nuro driver that perhaps may not be full level 4, and it may be adjusted to accommodate that in a way that isn't quite as robust from a full sensor perspective. But we'll have more to share on that in due time.
Okay, so based on that, I'll say the economics of where you're going look very good, and there's a reason why Uber invested as part of this deal. We know that you're going to launch on the Uber platform together. We know that you're going to go global. What else is planned here?
Well, this is a really, really big, ambitious partnership here. We are trying to deploy tens of thousands of vehicles around the world, serve many, many millions of robotaxi customers. And ultimately, this is a big robotaxi bet for us. And so we're very focused on delivering the technology on time in a way that is safe, scalable, so on. I don't want to downplay that that's a big undertaking. We feel very confident in our ability to deliver it. Uber does as well. They know what they're doing in this regard. They could have chosen anyone to make this bet on, and they did their homework and chose Nuro. So we're really excited, first and foremost, to deliver that. But it really is just a jumping off point. I think the aspirations that Uber has, that Nuro has, so on for this partnership are much larger than even some of the headline numbers would suggest.
What it does is it validates, I know I said it before, but it validates your licensing pivot, which I said at the time, and I'll say it again, I think was a brilliant move by the team. So you're going into Robotaxi, you're going into personally owned, and let's call it Nuro Other Bets. You got a Nuro's Other Bets program going on. What happens to the beloved, I call it the Pixar character, I'm sorry, what happens to the bots? Do the bots, do you sell them to Disney and then they start appearing in Pixar movies, or do we eventually see those deployed at some point?
It's not something we plan to scale commercially, but the bots have been really important for us to develop the capabilities of doing driverless deployments. It obviously is not something that a human could even fit in. And so from day one, it is occupantless, it is driverless. We did a big announcement late last year in terms of the deployment that we did at city scale with those vehicles. And when you zoom out and think about where a given AV player is in its journey, the things that I would encourage people to assess would be, one, what is their experience in doing driverless deployments? If you have L4 aspirations, you need a track record of doing driverless deployments. You need to show that you can validate the safety of your system and actually deploy it in a fully driverless capacity. And again, I think the fact that Nuro has done that for 4 or 5 years now speaks volumes to where we are in our overall technical maturity. The other big one that people should look at is, do you have a vehicle platform that can integrate the AV hardware on the production line, is scalable, and has favorable unit economics? Clearly, we now have that with the Lucid platform. And so the bot, again, is something that we've invested a lot in. We think has taught us a lot in terms of doing the fundamental integrations, scaling these vehicle programs. It's just not something that we plan to scale into the future. This Lucid Gravity platform is really the focus right now. There will be other platforms that follow, as I mentioned, but a delivery-only form factor is probably not going to be one of them.
Could we eventually see a Lucid Air at some point, perhaps?
I can't share concrete plans, but I think it's reasonable to assume that the Gravity is not the only vehicle that we will ultimately integrate the Nuro driver onto.
Smart. I'll leave it at that. I won't push. I'll say very smart. By shutting down, if you want to use that term, or pausing, or the off ramp of the bot, the company is showing, in my opinion, a lot of business discipline. Where does that discipline come from? Is it coming from the founders, or where does that come from? Because I gotta give you a lot of credit. Nobody knew you 2-3 years ago where you guys were gonna go, and then you were very kind to host me and laid everything out for me. And I walked out of me and said, okay, they got something going on here. Now prove it. And boy, oh boy, you proved it. Where does that business discipline stem from?
Nuro's culture generally is more about substance over style. And we have been heads down quietly building one of the most advanced autonomy stacks in the world over the last couple years, and we've certainly navigated some uncertainty in terms of how that will ultimately get brought to market. But I give our founders, Jay-Z and Dave, a lot of credit in terms of being very principled in making decisions around how we are going to move this business forward. And we were kind of staring into the abyss in terms of not having a clear go-to-market when we paused that R3 delivery bot program. But at the end of the day, we had to look internally and say, we don't think that's the right decision. It is too capital intensive. And we want to make this bet that the ecosystem will evolve such that we can license our L4 autonomy stack, focus on our core competency, and have the rest of the value chain form around us. And so I can't claim at the time when we made that decision that it was clear all those pieces would come together. But I think ultimately you just have to be very principled in taking risks and dealing with the uncertainty and choosing the right answer, even when it's uncomfortable. And I think the need to be capital efficient has been really uncomfortable at times. We talked about this when I was on last. We run very lean as a company, but again, it's paying off. The fact that we have made it this far, we now have this deal that really validates our future, our model, and we have plenty of runway, sets us up really well for this next phase of autonomous vehicles generally.
And you never gave up. You could have taken the easy way out, hired a bank and said, "Okay, we're for sale," and then end up in a fire sale. But you never gave up. The grit, where'd that come from? So you had the business acumen to look into the abyss and say, "Okay, we got to figure something out." But you can't build grit. You're born with grit. Where did that grit come from? Just to never give up when you were, as a company, trying to decide where you ultimately want to go before, as I said earlier, you struck gold.
A lot of it is just commitment to the mission. Dave and Jay-Z have been very clear from day one why this company exists. We are trying to bring the benefits of robotics and specifically autonomous vehicles to the world for everyone to enjoy. And it just never felt like our work was done, like the journey was over. And I think you have to kind of let go of attachment to outcomes and say, we're in this for the right reasons. We enjoy the process. We're doing good work here. We just have to keep our heads down and keep doing that. And again, I think we've been pretty quiet over the last couple of years, just focused on building. And that's not always easy. I think there are certainly some folks out there who are making more noise. But at the end of the day, if you're building something that's really hard and you can deliver that in a way that creates value for customers, you're going to find a path to success. And I think that's where we are. I think the future is incredibly bright for Nuro, and I'm grateful to be part of it.
The future is very bright for Nuro. The public statements and the investments validate that, and the overall structure of the deal validates that. When, let's just use Los Angeles or San Francisco, two major robotaxi markets. When you deploy the Nuro vehicle with Uber and Lucid into those markets, do you have to pre-map those markets, and then how do you envision the ODD growing over time?
When it comes to mapping, we are moving towards an approach that does not require HD maps. We are not there yet. So our first launch cities will be reliant on HD maps. We've done a lot of mapping of these areas already, so it's not going to require necessarily incremental work for the markets that you mentioned, but over time it will move away entirely from HD mapping.
When you move away from HD mapping, and there's 3 or 4 weeks ago, NVIDIA put up a corporate blog about mapless and allowing autonomy to scale. To me, when you achieve mapless, you just unlocked personally owned autonomy. Is it fair to look at that roadmap being aligned that way?
It's a big part of it. The other big part of personally owned autonomy is the cost of the hardware being such that people can afford it on personally owned vehicles. That is certainly a future that we think will arrive sooner rather than later. We've done a lot of work to down cost our AV hardware stack, as I mentioned in the context of the Robotaxi business, but that will benefit personally owned vehicles as well. I've had a lot of friends ping me, say, "Hey, how do I get a level 4 Lucid Gravity someday?" It's not something that is available in the short term, but I don't think you have to squint too hard to believe that the cost of our hardware will continue to come down such that that's actually a viable economic proposition.
You can add me to the list of people that will ping you to buy one. So I just did it very publicly. So when you get to that point, please let me know and send over
Absolutely.
the pre-order form. Waymo is out there. They're out there. We're in a road trip city. And I've noticed whoever manages your X account does a phenomenal job on X for Nuro road trip city. And you're here and you're there and you post all this really cool little trivia facts about the cities that I like. Somebody that studies the markets and reads the market. So road trip city for Waymo's got more than a 50% chance that eventually that becomes a deployment, as we're seeing that happen with Dallas and I believe next Nashville. Can I read into that with you, or is this purely a data gathering exercise?
A lot of it is about making our autonomy stack as generalizable as possible. But in terms of our actual launch roadmap, yes, there is overlap. So To the extent that we are doing heavy data collect in a given city, that obviously helps with the timeline to launch that market. But at the end of the day, when you have a fully end-to-end AI-based approach to autonomy like we do, you really need to inform that with as much data diversity as possible. And so the driving behavior that we see in Houston versus San Francisco versus some of these other cities that we've done data collect in, all is pretty diverse. The ODD itself is pretty diverse. And so it's all about just making autonomy perform better. One thing you did touch on in your last question that I don't think I answered was the ODD of what the Uber roadmap looks like and where we are today. So one of the things that I think gives us a lot of confidence in the timeline that we've talked about publicly for the Uber launch is the fact that the driverless deployment that we did late last year from an operational design domain perspective is pretty similar to what the city scale ODD would be to launch a robotaxi service. It's basically all surface streets within a given city, not highways yet, but no restrictions on maneuvers in terms of unprotected turns or railroad crossings, so on. You have nighttime driving, you have light rain, so on. So again, from an ODD perspective, you don't have to progress that much in terms of where the Nuro driver was when we did that launch late last year to where it needs to be late next year. Obviously, there are things we can continue to improve in terms of how smooth it is, how human-like it is, the scalability of the overall exposure across many, many rides and so on. But again, I would emphasize that Uber has seen a lot in terms of where AV folks are in their respective technical journeys, and they made a very informed bet in betting on Nuro.
I like it. I like the bet. You said highways, not yet. I like the keyword yet. Is the current, let's call it Nuro Lucid Stack 1.0? Because obviously over time this stack will change. It's just how technology is. Is Stack 1.0 capable of highway driving not from a hardware perspective? Remove all the legal liability, remove all the risk, just from a pure hardware standpoint. Is it capable?
Yes, the current sensing compute stack is highway capable. We are doing highway testing today here in the Bay Area. So next time you're in town, we'll give you a ride along that includes some highway driving. But in terms of when that highway launch will come in the robotaxi context, it is something that won't be day one. It's something that we'll have to scale into.
Oh, that's fair. Everybody scales into it. From a decision-making standpoint, is the decision to expand the ODD to go on highways, is that made by Nuro? Is that made by Uber? Is that made by Lucid? Or collectively, is there a board that makes these final big impactful decisions?
In a three-way partnership like this, you really need a good governance structure, so to speak, in terms of how to set the roadmap, how to work through problems, how to manage risks, so on. So we feel very good about the collaboration between our three companies. On that topic specifically, the roadmap for ODD, for city launches, so on, is something that we've been in close discussions with all three of us. Some of it is outlined in the agreement, some of it is not, but it's one of those things, again, that we'll collaborate on to get to the best answer.
Staying on the issue of the partnership of collaboration, I've been doing a lot of research on energy and a lot of research on maintenance. Obviously, the Nuro driver is highly complex. Will you work with your partners to develop a maintenance training program where individuals that are going to work on the vehicles will get training from all three partners of how to operate at the depot of the future?
Yes, fleet management is a big part of the overall operating expense to make this program work. It's a competency that Uber has built quite a bit of expertise in over the years in various forms. And given that Uber and its partners will be the one managing the fleet, we want to do everything we can to set them up for success. We've got a fleet team internally that has built a lot of expertise in terms of managing the AV hardware, keeping uptime high, doing retrofits when needed, so on. And we will be going to great lengths to transfer as much of that knowledge as possible and set Uber up for success.
I know this is not Nuro specialty per se, but energy, I believe, is one of the limiting factors for robotaxis truly scaling today because of lack of energy. Because you're fighting with AI data centers, you're fighting with just general utilities, and I live in Florida, so you're fighting with the air conditioning man because you need energy to power the air conditioners. Do you have any insights on how collectively the partnership is planning to get enough energy in the markets you need to ensure that uptime, and then on the backside of that to ensure, let's just say hypothetically you launch on day one with 100, and then on day two you have 5,000, to ensure that you have enough energy to scale for where the market is for demand perspective?
The fleet infrastructure required to achieve the scale that we've talked about is not inconsequential, as you've kind of alluded to there, Grayson. But it's something that we're on top of. It's already being worked on. It's probably a question best answered by Uber, given that it does fall to Uber in terms of the overall roles and responsibilities. But it's something that, again, they will be making sufficient investment in such that it doesn't limit our scale.
Now that the announcement's public, how do you feel?
I feel great. This deal's been a lot of work. It's been over a year in the making. It's incredibly complex. It's very broad in its scope. It really sets Nuro up to be successful in a number of ways. It's hugely validating. The vibes here are good now, for sure. I think now that this is public and we can talk about it. So everyone's feeling really good. We just need to deliver. We feel very confident that we will. We'll have some other commercial announcements again in the coming months that are in the works today. But overall, I think the future is bright. This deal has been really phenomenal to work with Uber and Lucid on, and just excited to see it come to life.
As you get towards deployment, will we see any public announcements around testing prior to deployment? Are there any plans for that we can look for signs that the market and your partnership is really ramping up?
Yes, we will have vehicles on the road, the Lucid Gravity vehicles on the road, doing data collect with our hardware stack relatively soon here. I don't want to commit to a specific date, but it's something that will be in the public, out in the wild, on public roads quite soon.
Nuro is scaling and Neuro's building the future. Andrew, to you and the entire team at Nuro, well done. To the Uber team, well done. And to the Lucid team, way to go. You put your great engineering in autonomy, and this is what we love to see. Well done. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is Nuro. Andrew, keep scaling. I can't wait to see what's next.
Thanks, Grayson. Great to see you again.